So anyway, so yeah, we're at Jenny Lam's office. So I won't ask you the famous question of who you are, but who are you?
I'm Jenny Lam.
Yep.
And I'm the creative lead on the MSX design team.
And what does that mean?
Well, MSX actually stands for Microsoft User Experience, but we're the design team that is on the Windows User Experience team. We work on the user experience for the Shell, Internet Explorer, Windows Media Player, Digital Image Gallery, and MSN Music Service.
Now you're way underplaying your role here. That's right. Let me get my tripod set up here.
Let me close the door.
Okay. Well, as I walk around Microsoft, there's some people who I keep hearing their name.
Yeah.
And you're one of them.
Jenny Lam.
And your name comes up with, like you did all the PDC graphics, right?
Yeah.
And experiences, right?
Yeah.
And you do a lot of the visual stuff we see in Windows, right?
Right,
Can you tell us a little bit about what your job is like?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. It's actually kind of a new discipline.
It's that bright screen is making it dark. Much better.
It's kind of a new discipline at Microsoft. I call it branding user experience, and it's not just about the brand touch points you see in marketing, but having that come from that sort of perception of what the product is all about and that gut feeling that someone has about a product, that it comes from the product and it resonates through various things like packaging and internal communications like our posters and our events like PDC, which is a huge event for us. That really exposes the power of the PC and what the community can contribute to our ecosystem. And then, also things like business cards and, collateral and marketing materials and website design, things like that. So I touch so many things, and PDC was sort of a moonlighting job for me because I did the packaging for the goods in 2003, and they asked me in 2005 to sort of take on the overall creative direction for PDC, and I said, sure, heck yeah, that's a great event, I'll do it. And so I did the packaging, which is over there, as well as I sort of cherry-picked the stuff that I really cared about a lot, like the video that opened up the show.
Oh, that was really cool.
And sort of the graphics behind the stage, just sort of undulating ribbons, things, and some of the sort of the general feeling of the PDC.
Right. Now, when we get Windows Vista, what are we going to see that's yours, that you did?
So I own, I hate saying that word, but I drive the desktop wallpaper and screensavers. I'm working on.
So you're the one responsible for the green grass I see all over campus.
But see, that was kind of a trick because we want to save our thunder for launch, and so we wanted to come out with something that really showed off the glass really well. So when you run, the glass over the blades, you can actually see the refraction, and you can get a sense of dimension and depth, and that it's higher fidelity. But it wasn't a nod or wink to anything in the future. It's sort of a placeholder, but a nicer version. But yeah, I'm responsible for grass, even the bales of hay in Alpha.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
It's funny because the Niners, the Channel Niners, and all the bloggers use that as their sort of image to represent Vista. And
there's whole industries.
I know.
There's whole industries of people out there, like at NeoWin, who wish they could sit behind you and get.
That's why I have certain things closed right now. But I also started the initial creative development of the icons, so the 3D icons, all that stuff. I mean, there are a lot of little touch points, but it's not just me. It's this world-class group of designers here who work on the hard problems like the interaction design of them, and so we work really closely together and then also with usability and ethnography and so.
Now I work with a lot of geeks, both here at Microsoft and outside in the real world, and generally the stereotypes stick true, right? They're really great at writing algorithms or really great at understanding how the machine works and how to make it do something, but they're not really good at emotion. They're not the kinds of people you would see at a Martha Stewart apprentice.
Yeah.
casting call, right?
It's engineers and developers and geeks. Everything they do is measurable, and emotion is a really hard thing to measure. And we've found tricks here and there to try to get a feeling for where we're going with it. We just did this study in LA where people had dials in an audience, and so we ran through a demo of it was purely around visuals. And they would dial up or they would dial down based on how they were feeling about the product. And so you sort of get this gut reaction without having to deal with words that are pretty slippery. So that's an interesting way. And Joey, who's on our the MSX user research team, he's been looking at desirability sort of exercises about what's desirable and why, and the why is so important. So yeah, it's a tough thing, and it's so subjective, and sometimes you just want to go with your gut feeling with like, this is the right thing to do for Microsoft. Let's not measure it, and let's not like analyze the heck out of it. Let's just do what we feel is right and where the industry is headed. And sometimes we get compared to Apple. A lot of times we get compared to Apple.
I compare Microsoft to Apple.
It's hard because there's so few competitors to compare us against, and they are great. They have a great design philosophy, but those design philosophies are universal. Clear space, hierarchy, good use of typography, things like that. And so those types of things we're adopting, we're paying really great attention to, just because it's the right thing to do, not because we're trying to copy Apple.
Yeah. Well, you can tell the UI has gone in a different direction than Apple has anyway. So
you think so? Some people say.
I think so. I think it's there's similarities here and there, but there's going to be. It's like a car is going to have a steering wheel, right?
Right.
It's going to have four tires.
Yeah.
Most cars have four tires. Yeah. I mean, I see things that they do that we've done, in the past, and vice versa, right? But they're not doing transparent windows.
No.
And they're not doing some of the folder lookup that we're doing,
It's kind of cool because a lot of, all of our design decisions around transparency and these things that seem just like eye candy actually have some practical value to them. Yeah. So Cheer does this, I don't know if you've seen his presentation on Aero. He just did one to sort of the community just recently. Yeah. And there's we have this list of all the practical reasons why we went with, transparency, and why we went with black for the sidebar and for the taskbar. And and they make sense. So we always carry this mantra around. It's smart, meet beautiful, because it's that sort of balance of both.
How do you convince Microsoft? How do you convince Microsoft to get into this new world? Because I'll be honest, my branding of Apple and Microsoft go back to the 1980s, and go back to maybe even the late 70s, right? When I first saw the Apple II, and it had a beautiful industrial design, and no other computer manufacturer back in the late 70s was paying attention to design like that. And some of that brand that I have goes back that far with Apple and with Microsoft. And Microsoft, I remember comparing a Mac II back in the late 80s to a Windows 2 machine, which was pretty ugly in comparison.
Yeah.
If you can actually go to our company store and see some of these computers.
We have posters down that red hallway of the history of computing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets back. It's pretty gnarly.
So how do you convince Microsoft to go dramatically farther than it has with the user interface and user emotion and experience?
Well, I don't think there was much convincing that we had to do. I think we realized that when other competitors started copying us, that we were easily commoditized, and that's what can help us prevent commoditization is distinctiveness and emotional connection, and creating a brand that people can see and say, I know that's Windows, I can trust it, and it's not a ripoff. And so I think it's a business sort of wake-up call when we saw those cloners go out. So I don't think there was much convincing. There's some really smart people over in the business group who care about branding a lot and who really know it really well. And I think the task for us is really how to communicate through the product the value of Windows, and people. There's this huge opportunity, and there's very unique where the business is doing really healthy, and we're very successful, but there's very little emotional connection and desirability, and people don't understand why they have Windows or, what the value it brings to them.
Right.
So, tactics like visuals do a lot, sound, packaging, even the way we talk to our customers and the tone and manner and behavior, all of that adds up to this overall impression. And so, to answer your question, it's just it's something we need to do, or we're just gonna.
Well, this is part of a bigger trend in society right now, right?
Yeah.
The video games we're playing with are getting much more sophisticated. I mean, you compare, Flight Simulator of 20 years ago to Flight Simulator of today, and it's not even in.
Oh, really?
You wouldn't even recognize.
I'm not a gamer.
You wouldn't even recognize the product, right?
Yeah.
You go to retail. And retail is now an experience.
Totally.
You go to the Sony Metreon in San Francisco, and they have video games on the floors, and they have, they've really spent time thinking about the materials used in the place, and the whole experience you have when you walk in.
Well, Starbucks is a great example of a cup of coffee, sort of reinventing what that is into an experience where you go and you listen to music, and you surf the internet on your laptop there, or the potato peeler with OXO.
Now, we just lost about 80% of the geeks.
Oh, sorry.
No, but this is how I know
I'm
they
sure
think.
geeks go to Starbucks.
No, but when you start talking about soft and touchy and emotional things, they don't think that way. In fact, I interviewed the Sparkle team, right?
Yeah.
And I had a geek and a designer, and the geek admitted, I can't even see color. I can't see. I can't see when Manuel changes the UI. I just don't. I'm not sensitive to that. I don't live in that world. I live in a command line that's black and white and has characters in it. And it's interesting that these two worlds are intersecting now.
Yeah.
Across the company and across the industry.
Well, I think that's interesting because when we first were developing our creative for PDC, we were trying to get to the mind of the developer. So I'm not very technical, and I'm not a developer, but I work with a lot of them, and implementing our designs, we struggle sometimes with that communication, but I find that developers are actually pretty creative folks. Like they see things differently, and I don't know how to explain it, but like we had that idea of the string theory about all these ideas merging together to create something bigger, and so I think developers and geeks are creative, but they're just creative in a different way, and you need to find that language to sort of talk to them with.
Yeah. Why a circular start button?
Well, it's not just circular. It bumps up above the taskbar, so it's and it actually is a square pressure area because
if you go, the focus is rectangular.
Yeah.
So if you take your mouse all the way to the corner and push down, you still get the menu. So it's not just what you see, which is really great because that's usability.
Right.
So many
throw your mouse
people,
down there.
if you made the target area just that circle, it would really piss me off.
Right. You have a fascination with the start button. I've watched a couple videos, and
I have a fascination with little things like that because it fascinates me where the UI comes from and how it evolves.
Well, the answer to that is that it's simple. I mean, that's another one of our sort of design charters, was to simplify the UI. So getting rid of that text to the right of start. I mean, people recognize Windows for like two things. I mean, if you just from a pedestrian sort of conversation, it's the start button in the lower left and the clock in the lower right. That's how they know it's Windows. And so we knew that people really are very familiar with that element. To make it more like a jewel-like piece and to simplify it was sort of what made our design decisions.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if you know, but we localize that text.
Oh, really?
Start in XP, and so it looks pretty crummy because clear type isn't turned on by default, and the kerning, just letter spacing, is kind of off. It's not perfect, and so it's let's get rid of that text. People know it's start, and let's just make it this beautiful gem.
Interesting. How many iterations do you go through to design something like that?
We went through, I want to say, like over 200 plus. It was 3 designers. Our design lead, Mark Ligamarian, Greg Melander, and myself. And we partied on that thing, like in Photoshop, just throwing our files back and forth to each other. We call it Photoshop tennis. And there must be like at least 200 versions of that. And we were still tinkering away at it. Just last week, we were trying to fix the colors on it to make sure that the hover was noticeable enough and the depressed state was strong enough.
How do you know you nailed it? How do you know when to stop? Maybe
they run out of time, and then you put it in a beta, and you get feedback from a lot of people, through the TAP programs or just regular public. So and you test it in the labs.
What other things in Windows Vista are you going to show off at design conferences or show off to other designers who come and visit you or that you meet?
Well, I can't.
What are you proud of?
I can't talk about a lot of it because
Okay.
we're trying to save it for launch.
All right. So there's some good stuff coming in.
There's some good
So
stuff.
we haven't seen the final UI. That's a big.
Well,
significant-
no. The UI is pretty much there. Like, I think what's going to really make it the sort of icing on the cake is the fit and finish, sort of the polish around everything. And I mean, that's personally been my pet peeve is when you drag a window, things don't feel really smooth and really crafted. And I think that's the sort of the last part of our effort is nailing that.
What are you proudest of that you can talk about?
Gosh.
Maybe in beta 2.
Well, it's hard to say because the brand philosophy that I've really been put forth through Windows Vista is that branding isn't about putting the logo everywhere, just like throwing little stickers everywhere, but is this sort of end-to-end experience so that when you go to the retail environment and you see PCs without the 404 error screen and they're actually on and they're running a screensaver or something really great and informative and attractive, and then you actually experience the product from turning it on and hearing the beautiful startup sound to organizing and visualizing your files, then someone gets it that it all was designed to the sort of in a thoughtful manner. So I think that's what I'm most proud of, and it's hard to pinpoint because the philosophy has been this holistic experience. So
Yeah. Tell me about folder icons.
why they went vertical?
Well, tell me about them. Just how are they changed from Windows XP, and tell me a little bit about the design
An interesting question.
process that you guys went through for folder icons.
We started the process I guess it was 4 years ago. We knew that icons in XP were fairly cartoony. They were low res. So if you're running high resolution monitor, like your icons would look really jagged. So we decided, we made a stand on increasing the resolution on these, so they go up to 256 by 256 pixels, which seems jumbo and huge, but when you're looking at them on a high-res monitor, they look nice and crisp.
Yep.
So the folder icon was actually one of the first icons we explored with an agency called Icon Factory. Great guys in North Carolina, and we talked about making this unique for Vista because it was just this new look and feel. So we put the folder on its side and made it vertical, and so that you could see some of the documents in it. And virtual folders took on this sort of blue, clear shape, so you could see through. So they look like glass folders, and you could see through them.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they have shadows on them now.
Yeah, and they have a perspective. There's a little formula for things that objects that sort of stand up on a desk.
Yeah.
Would be at a certain isometric perspective with a drop shadow, and then things that are flat like a piece of paper would be at a bird's eye perspective, so the camera would be looking down, and you get a nice mass of pixels.
Yeah. Now, what was the delivery for the folder, for instance? How many? What was it? A bitmap? Was it a ping file?
Originally we had this we thought we could do everything in vector, you know, because you could scale them however big you wanted, but you lose a lot of sort of fidelity and finesse and like the drop shadow touches and like really fine cornered edges that you can't get in vector that you could get in Photoshop. So originally they were delivered to us in vector, and we'd tweak around with them. We'd actually throw them into Photoshop and add nice little touches here, and then they get exported at, as an ICO file, and different sizes. So we author them at a big size, and then a mid size, and then that 16 by 16, which is like a pain in the butt to make because it's 16 pixels and there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
So you really have to sit there and like poke at them and make them as close as to the original beautiful 256 version.
Wow. And so you use Adobe Photoshop? What other tools do you use?
I use Photoshop, I use Illustrator, I use PowerPoint, a lot of PowerPoint these days because of presentations and visualizing our design philosophy to other teams.
Yeah.
I use InDesign a lot for print collateral. So I still love print, and I do it every chance I can. So that's what else do I use? I dabble a little bit in Flash, and I've played around with Sparkle, and just ramping up on some of and Visual Basic. Sometimes we use that.
Yeah, for prototyping kind of
Yeah.
things. Do you think Sparkle's going to change how you do the next OS after Windows Vista?
I think definitely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Interesting. You said so the icon, the folder icon was what, 3 files then you delivered into the OS, right?
Yeah, well, there's
3.ico files.
right, and they're huge now. They're like over, well, some of them can be about a half a meg.
Really?
Yeah, because they have this big high resolution ICO file in there, so they can load up this. I mean, the system has like I think over 800 new icons right now for Beta 2,
Okay.
which is a huge effort because that each one of those icons were hand done.
Now, how do you check your stuff into the source code that builds Windows Vista here? And how often? Like, I get builds every once in a while. You know, I'm not doing the daily build thing,
Yeah.
but every once in a while. But I know, so when I'm watching people with daily builds, their UI changes almost every day lately.
Yeah, well,
And-
especially lately because we've been locking down Beta 2.
Okay.
We work really closely with developers, and we've got a couple of designers on this team. Harold Gomez is one of them who owns the theme file that has an enlistment, like he can actually check things in to the UX build, the UX user experience build. And so we work really closely with the developers, and then they check it in, and then we see a daily UX build, and eventually that UX build gets up to main
Okay.
and merges, and then you'll see new visuals.
Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like people to check out when they get like Beta 2 or get the final version of Windows Vista?
There were, let's see, there's one thing I was going to say, but it got yanked at the last minute because of performance issues.
Oh, that's interesting. So you even as a designer, you have to worry about how...
Totally. So I do some of the animations. There was an animation that's supposed to happen when you launch an Explorer. And it's really subtle. It's in the preview pane. But it was just a nice little touch to have something sort of alive and moving. So look out for that in RC0.
Okay.
The one thing you'll notice is that from Beta 1 we had all these random colors per Explorer, and we unified them to this blue-green Vista color. So you don't have this sort of rainbow of jewel tone colors.
Right.
That's sort of a brand nod. And you'll see a new desktop wallpaper.
Okay.
That speaks to the launch of our name. So we revealed our name in August,
Yep.
and this new wallpaper reflects it. It's not the final one.
Okay.
You'll see a new login
Yeah.
background, which is beautiful, and it's also sort of branded, but it doesn't have our big honkin' logo there.
Yeah. How do you
those are
get
new
the
things.
photography for the desktop?
So I've been on the past couple of months on a couple of really brutal photo shoots where we had to wake up at 2:30 in the morning and hike out to some mountaintop and with professional photographer.
Are you allowed to say where you were shooting?
Sure. Yeah, we shot in Santa Barbara
Okay.
because of its very diverse terrain. There's parts of it that looks like the Mediterranean. There's parts that look like the desert. A lot of the shots came back were really brown because we went in October where things are starting to dry up. But we're doing more photo shoots, and we just did one in New York to get sort of the urban feel. And these are sort of not, these are just sample desktop images that go in the box. We'll have more of those this time.
Why don't you just take submissions from average photographers?
You know, you sent me an email on that, and we're working on it. Yeah, and I think that there's going to be a contest that comes out later this year.
Hey?
Where we're taking
Is that really happening?
It really is happening. You started something really big.
I hope that's going to be fun.
And it's, I mean, I get like 2 emails a week at minimum from folks who are great photographers, and they want to show off their pictures, and they just want to give them to us, and they are truly great images, especially for the desktop, because it's something to take a picture, you know, just for picture's sake, but for a lit box, you know, where you put icons on top of is another thing. And there's something about people who are in technology who understand that they know what makes a really great desktop image. And I'm surprised by the quality. It's just, you know, at first I was like, this is a bad idea. It's kind of like saying, well, let's just get the people we know to be the models, you know, when, you know, that's not their talent. But some of the submissions are pretty good. And
what kind of spec do you need to actually make it into the product? How many pixels across and how many pixels that?
Well, we prefer different sizes because you have to accommodate for tablet, for portrait, and for widescreen. So we prefer an image that can be cropped. High resolution as possible, 16 by 12 is sort of the what people submit, and then we try to find a way to crop it. And then things to be aware of is things like, you know, icons that sit on top of it, and that the image may stretch, you know, if we don't get the cropping in right.
Well, and Bill Hill has one of those IBM monitors that's 3,500 pixels across.
Yes.
So do you have any images that are going to make him like go, my God, they put a really good photo in there?
Not yet, but it would be a great time to get some in.
I think that's like a 10 megapixel image, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that's 3,500
pixels.
Gotta do
by
something for
1,600 something.
Yeah.
It's a huge image size. My little Nikon only fills like 2/3 of its screen. You know?
Wow.
Where do you get your influence from, your creativity from? Where do you go to, you know, come up with a creative idea? Or
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I have design heroes that I love, you know, to sort of follow and watch. And,
who are they?
Bruce Mao is one of my idols. He's from Toronto, and he's I wouldn't really necessarily call him a designer. He's more of a philosopher. And
what's his name again?
Bruce Mao.
Okay.
M-A-U.
Okay.
So check out his stuff. He just had an exhibit in Vancouver called Massive Change, and it was about how design can really impact the world. And I mean, saving lives and things like that. I mean, design of you know, of environmental systems, or design of products that can make people, you know.
Well, look at our highways and how they've changed in 30 years. We have the bots dots that are on the lane markers.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I mean,
that's design,
that
right?
is design, right? Yeah. Urban planning.
The guy who invented this never got set for me. If he had only gotten a royalty deal, I would have signed up for 1/10 of a cent for each one of those things.
And then outside of work, I I run with this wacky group, Tasting Menu, and I'm sure you know, you probably interviewed Hillel Cooperman before.
Yeah.
But I'm their...
I don't think our film has actually made it to Hillel.
Oh, really? Oh.
I got to get back and interview him about the Max product.
I know he was on the .NET show, so sometimes I get you guys mixed up.
No, he has a great food blog. And
yeah, so we're a part of there's like 5-6 people in that group, and we make cookbooks, like online cookbooks. It's just because we love food, and Hillel's pretty crazy, and he loves like documentation, and he's really great at it, and Payman Orizi takes these beautiful photographs, and then I design an online book using that content. And it's pretty fun. So I'm even doing design outside of work.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
I blog at 3 in the morning too. Do weird things. What else should we know about your job? I mean, or about what's going to be appearing on screen. I mean, I know all the NeoWin guys are going, oh, can we get the latest screenshot?
Yeah, no, you can't. It's hard because we really want to share a lot of this stuff, but it's we can't, because if we do, then we lose all of our rights to it, and someone can copy it, and then some, then you end up getting two products that are really similar, and you confuse the user about which is which, and so it's a tricky balance we always have to fight. We definitely want to share our work. We've worked so hard for it, but
do you go in the user testing sessions and watch how users are actually?
Oh yeah.
What do you learn from that?
Well, I mean, a lot of it's just being there, and it's kind of a humbling experience and seeing people struggle, or get really offended by something that you designed. It's about I think that immediate sort of feeling of responsibility. And so Joey and I went out on the road, and we went to Phoenix, LA, Phoenix, and Atlanta, and did some interviews on the UI. And it's an interesting experience. People are so articulate about certain things and not so articulate about others. I mean, it's such a sort of fuzzy space. So the amazing thing was that we learned this past trip was that we tested some sounds, startup sounds, and people were amazingly articulate about sounds, about music, than they were about visuals.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that when they looked at a visual, they were like, yeah, that's cool. Well, why is it cool? And it was hard for them to get it out of them. I think it has to do with looking at an operating system, which you don't really see as a designed thing.
Yeah.
But music, they grooved on that. I mean, they just were able to talk about it.
Well, I think you just nailed it when you said grooved. We have a whole language about music and sound.
Yes.
And we don't really have a common language for visual. For visual experience. How, if you see an iPod, it makes you feel something, and you don't have a good way to express why it makes you feel that way, or the way you do on music.
Right. And I think music has an immediate emotional response that is different from visuals. It's and people can talk about melody and beat and rhythm. It's the language thing. Yeah.
What do you hope developers who build on Windows Vista, especially for Windows Vista, how do you hope they step up their game to riff on the work you've done?
That is our dream. Is that, I mean, this is sort of the reason why we even raised the bar on visuals, was to get applications that run on Vista to totally shine, and for them to differentiate. I mean, that's sort of our competitive edge too, is that you can run on top of Windows and be your own distinctive experience. And so borrowing from some of the foundational elements like Explorer and dialogues and wizards and things like that, and just the common elements and the common controls, building your own distinctness on top of that, that's what we hope for.
Okay. Any other things that we should know about your job? Any misconceptions that people might have? Oh, you're just an artist, and
well, we're not.
Or your job's easy. All you do is play in Photoshop all day. That's easy. I mean, I play in Photoshop. It's fun.
I think at Microsoft, it's been a really interesting past 5 years, for designers, because we were seen as pure UI people, that we just designed widgets, and we still do that. I mean, that's still true. But we also stepped up the game and helped lead, the vision about experience. So it's not just about widgets, but it's about the flow of interaction, and it's about the bigger picture, and it's about the brand. I mean, it's about all these things, and and it's sort of design-driven engineering in a way, not to offend the developers, but we're sort of partners now, and I think that's changed a lot. And
how has Microsoft changed? How long have you been at Microsoft?
it'll be, oh my gosh, it'll be 4 years in February.
That's all? You've had a huge impact in 4 years. So,
Thanks.
how has it changed? Well, you've talked about how it's changed in 4 years. What do you want to do that you're not able to do in Vista?
Oh, let's see.
Have you started thinking about what you're going to do for, I don't know, are they still calling it Blackcomb, the version of Windows
Oh,
after
I think we're
Windows
calling it
Vista?
Vista Plus One.
Windows Vista
That's what
Plus
I've
One.
heard people talk about it.
Have you started thinking, oh my God, I want to do that icon a little
Well,
differently?
the designers and I, there's several of us who think this. We want little toys, not just the gadgets. We want little toys on the desktop, where I've got things that you fool around with on your physical desktop, but just little senseless toys on the desktop that'd be kind of fun.
Hey, my dad bought a $4,000 PC just to play solitaire, so which drove me nuts. He was like, he had a top-of-the-line video card, and this was 5 years ago, and he'd play solitaire. It's like, Dad, you can play Doom or or Flight Simulator.
Well,
or,
we redesigned solitaire. Some of the visuals around that.
Yeah.
Gosh, there are a lot of little things. I mean,
Why is having a brand so important? What is it about knowing that it's an Apple computer you're sitting at or a Microsoft Windows computer?
Otherwise, you become like flour or sugar. It's all based on price. Then, if there's no emotional connection or need for desiring an iPod versus a Rio, then it just becomes competitive because of price. And
so brand goes way deeper than just the icon you
like
use,
the logo,
or the
yeah.
logo, or
Yeah.
it's the product design itself and how it makes you feel when you use it and show it to other people.
Absolutely, it's a perception. And the funny thing is that we don't own the brand. Like, we don't own the Windows brand. Like, our users own it. They develop the perception around the brand, and we can help influence it by building really great products and having visual cues and building this language around it, like Target has with their bullseye logo and their red and white ads.
I almost wore my Target shirt today.
Oh, you have a Target shirt?
Yeah, I spoke to them. And,
cool.
They gave me a shirt.
I love that brand.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the end user is the ultimate person who owns our brand, and we can just influence them with the products we build and the service we give them.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with us.
Sure.